This session is going to be chaired by Dr. Manoj Kumar Ganguly, Executive Member of CFSR and Librarian of Sonamukhi College affiliated to Bankura University, West Bengal. Dr. Ganguly, with a doctorate in Library and Information Science from University of Calcutta, extensively having work experience of more than 11 years with various institutions from corporate to academic, will be chairing the session. Besides, as an active member of CFSR, he has been chiefly instrumental in shaping the Memorandum of Understandings on behalf of CFSR with different colleges and universities all over Bengal, and have been actively involved in field works and recordings like Sonamukhi Utsav and Mela. I heartily welcome you, sir, in this session. Not taking much time, I would like Dr. Ganguly to take over the session and to introduce the audience with today's panel theme and the esteemed panelists. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Rusa ma'am, and all welcome to this panel discussion session B, from vernacularity to textuality, folk narratives in transition. So 4 panelists will have first of all introduce Dr. Yanbeni Yanthan, Assistant Professor, Center for Naga Tribal Language Studies, Nagaland University, Kohima. Then Dr. Sushmita Pareek, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Other Languages, Gitam School of Humanities and Social Science, Gitam, Hyderabad. Dr. Vahini Billu, Assistant Professor, Department of English, SR University, Warangal. Dr. Nivea Thomas K, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Cultural Studies, Christ deemed to University, Bangalore. So each panelist will have, due to shortage of time, each panelist will have the maximum 7 to 8 minutes to present their opening remarks and about the vulnerability to textuality and the narratives of the folk traditions, folk transitions. So first, welcome to Dr. Yanbeni Yanthan, Assistant Professor at the Center for Naga Tribal Language Studies. Her area of the studies include the oral tradition of the Nagas, folklore, vernacular literature, the study of the language and culture, and critical theory. Her poetry, essays, and reviews have been featured in various national and international spaces such as Riot, the Bombay Literature Magazine, Music of India, Outlook, Telangana Today, East Mojo, and many more. The Bangalore Literary Review, among others. She has also contributed her writing to the different collections, and Yanthan has also served as an assistant professor in the Department of English, State College. So, ma'am, please to introduce and also discuss the whole area of these panel discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning to everyone. Respected Chair, Dr. Ganguly, my mentor, Jolly sir, fellow panelists, scholars, and friends. Thanks to the Center for Folklore Research and Center for Folk Culture Studies, University of Hyderabad, for giving me this opportunity and space to share my reflections on a topic as important and pertinent as this one, which is basically, to situate the changing dynamics of folklore in a globalizing world and map the discursive ways through which meaning or analysis is activated, it's performed, and experienced as reality today. I've organized my talk to function as a kind of conceptual intervention and develop discourse in the related areas of oral tradition, globalization, and contextual studies. This stems from my own experience of misconstruing, misunderstanding the cultural practices of my own tribe, which is the Lotha Nagas. As I read their works as collected, as collections of folk tales, and then not understanding the meanings of certain proverbs told to me, or not even wholly understanding why certain characters in folk tales were doing what they did. My question, and I seem to have more questions in my talk or my paper than observations, or maybe rather in my intention, is to address the problems of conceptualization and interpretation of traditional folklore when the reference points of the culture context has been rendered untenable due to external factors, or when the reference points keep shifting. So to this end, I will allude to examples from this from the Naga oral tradition, a tradition that has been birthed, shaped, and transmitted through a legacy of primary orality, and that has only recently become literalized and then digitized. So when the first works of the Nagas was undertaken by J.P. Mills and later Hutton. They documented their documentations of the various folk genres, which is folktale, song, and some of the ancient poems. They exemplify a corpus that was not, although chiefly academic, they were driven by the cultural curiosity with the bureaucratic aim of better understanding the colonized, or but to better govern the colonized. So what happened was, invariably, these documentations of folk and the folklore of the various tribes came to be perceived as the rudimentary kind of first translation of the oral to the literal. So for the Nagas, what happened was, when this documentation took place, for the Nagas, such works served as the basis of differentiation for informing their nascent cultural and linguistic identity. And till today, it has also informed much of the academic work on the culture and history of the Nagas being undertaken today. Now, in this light, I feel that it is very important to read folklore when it is documented as an act of customization. In that, when folklore, when it is digitized or when it is literalized, we can say that, it gets standardized. And this standardization, in this documentation, invariably becomes an act of erasure, even as the plurality of oral tradition is homogenized. So what happens is, during my field work in certain parts of Nagaland, I came across many different versions and variations. So if anyone does not know about the Nagas, we are a group of like about 16, 17 tribes in Nagaland itself. And each clan and each village have their own story about their kinship or about their origin, migration, the folk tales, the belief systems. So what happened was, when these gets transmuted into another medium, what happens is that there is a customization that takes place. This customized or the identity that comes out is in turn identified as tradition. So what happens is that the customization of folklore seems to be this predestined part, or we can say the evolutionary process of the lore. So in the case of oral traditions like the Nagas, this is more pronounced and reactionary, because the assimilation often communicates and carries its own expositions. So what happens is that, the hold on the folklore, for example, of the folklore in the social imagination of the people is manifest in different ways. However, these are not documented. So when culture change takes place, when the context that birthed, or the context in which the particular folk dance or folk song is performed or enacted, it becomes how should I put it? It becomes redundant to the culture that is watching or experiencing that form of folklore. So given the fact that almost each Naga village and clan subscribes to their own sense of history, I have come across many instances where the prescriptive model, which is basically the chronicled or documented folklore, has replaced the people's understanding of themselves, with number of these little histories vanishing into oblivion. We only when I interact with slightly older people do I get a sense of the people's real history of themselves. Similarly, unraveling the contextual meanings of proverbs and idioms are becoming more and more difficult as the people who understand them in the contextual environment are far and few in between. Similarly, just in the morning, we were listening to Ma'am Seng Mai's talk on ecological thought in proverbs, and even these verbal genres reflecting ecological thought and embodiment, such as in idiomatic sayings and sayings, are losing their contextual meaning, most often replaced by borrowed proverbs from English and other languages. My question here is, how do we as folklorists, as indigenous people, as tribals, communicate with our traditions or our context in a meaningful way that reflects folklore truly as a people's history about themselves? How do we contextualize our traditions in the light of these homogenizing tendencies of globalization? How do we avoid exoticizing, demonizing these or othering these parts of ourselves? And most significantly, I want to ask this question to the house. How do we make folk traditions of cultures where the past has become relegated as a kind of monolithic entity as sites of resistance? Basically, how do we create bridges between these worlds? Can we say that cultural amnesia is an inevitable natural process of cultural change? I ask these questions, especially in the context of diminishing cultural heritage. And as we are experiencing today, a lot of folklore studies is becoming affiliated or associated with cultural heritage today, intangible cultural heritage today. Recently, there was one tweet on social media by a Naga person who stated, "What has our indigenous culture given us?" It was posted by a young Naga, I think it was a man. It got me thinking about the role and function and place of traditional folklore or cultural manifestations that are part of cultural heritage that has been disseminated through specific legacies. Although this question was said in a manner of curiosity, as somebody who has worked with folklore and language, this was a loaded question. For me, it represented the dichotomy and the dissociation that the younger Naga people have with their traditions. So in conclusion, I would say that the folklore of the Nagas, it works in different ways to assimilate tribal identity into the larger group, developing inroads into different levels of identity as a tribal, as a Naga, as Christian, as Indian. So what's happening is that Western-led globalization has been gradually replacing the social stratification of the pre-modern world with social formations and permutations and with new social order based on economic modalities. That is why we have new problems like marginalizations of the weaker groups or little histories have emerged. So these are just my opening statements. So thank you so much.
Thank you, madam, for great the speech and about the this particular area. So after end of the all the panelists discussion, will question answer and open forum discussions. Now we are going to the next panelist, Dr. Sushmita Pareek, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Other Languages, Gitam School of Humanities and Social Science. So now I request to Sushmita ma'am, Sushmita Pareek, to join and to discuss about our today's discussion. So before start the discussion about the Sushmita Pareek has a doctoral degree from Center for Applied Linguistics and Translational Studies, University of Hyderabad. She is a recipient of the Erasmus Worldwide Scholarship and worked as a Peter Székely Institute of Comparative Literature, Peru University, Berlin. She has a master's degree in English literature from Lady Sri Ram College, Delhi University, and has honors degree in the English Delhi University and research publications expertise in the cultural and folklore studies, translational studies, and eco criticism and children's literature. So now I request madam, please go ahead and to discuss the sessions.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the introduction. I just want you guys to place a face for what is to come. I'll just stop my camera and share my screen instead. Is my PPT visible?
It's coming, but it's not.
Yes, ma'am. It is.
Great. Not much on the PPT, but thank you so much, Jolly sir, and everybody here. Although I don't belong to originally belong to this department officially, but I have a long association with Center for Folklore and Cultural Studies. Today, I want to talk about Rajasthani folk narratives. With special attention to women's narratives in form of Lok-Geet and their contextualized forms in popular media. The presentation is divided into 4 parts. The first part is a brief overview of folklore in Rajasthan and different languages within the state. The second part comprises of 3 excerpts from select Lok-Geet sung by women and a deeper understanding of orality as exercising agency in a patriarchal society. The third part attempts to use translation as a methodology to study contextualization. And the final section of the presentation discusses another case study to highlight the anthropomorphic animal symbolism encoded in folk narrative that can be studied to observe shifts in animal-human relationship through various contextual shifts. So folk narratives are as... Yes, sir?
PPT is not visible. Go to the PPT presentation. Otherwise, your screen only visible. Please on the PPT.
Yes, the PPT is not coming.
Oh, okay. Just click the PPT.
It's not coming, sir.
Because you want to minimize the screen and go to the PPT. Presentation. Please put it on the PPT. PowerPoint.
Is it visible
Yeah,
now?
yes.
Yeah, now it's coming. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, visible.
So the folk narratives are as diverse as paintings on the walls of homes in the Thar to proverbial one-liners, often used to mock human actions and behaviors, drawing parallels between animals and humans. So we have Lok-Geet, which is folk songs, Lok-Katha, which is folk tales, Lok-Gatha. We have Lok-Natya, Lok-Subhashita, and Okhanas, which is proverbial sayings. If you see a map of Rajasthan based on languages, you can see how linguistically diverse this area is. Even though Rajasthani is not recognized as a scheduled language, I use Rajasthani here as an umbrella term for languages similar and spoken across the state. The state governance uses Hindi for official purposes. The ages-long traditions of the princely states recorded and preserved have long been neglected because of this language shift from Rajasthani to Hindi. However, in recent times, we also see a shift back in this outlook and a revival of folk narratives, which brings me to this Vijayan Data's contribution to the Rajasthani. As scholars in folk and cultural studies, I'm sure the listeners know about him. Batari Fulvari, which is 14-volume collection of folk tales from Rajasthan. This was awarded the first ever Sahitya Academy Award in Rajasthani for the contributions. So we see a shift from orality to textuality for the first time, which is recognized on a national level. And Vijayan Data writes in his introduction to Bathari Fulvari, my village was my university and my literary education, if any, came from rural women who always had so many interesting stories, anecdotes, and wisdoms to share. When men my age went out to hunt or drink, I used to sit in my courtyard listening to what the women had to say, their gossip, their tales. At one point, I specifically started to invite all the women who were willing to just sit with me and talk. There were days when I was surrounded by women lost in conversation for hours at end. The translation is mine. Here, when I see the shift from orality to textuality, I also see the shift in who is the teller of the story. I see a shift in the gender of the teller. I see the shift in who's the listener and now the reader. I also see a shift in stories and narratives from domestic space to public space, on how these stories, folk narratives and songs are performative and they shift to prescriptive or even something of a sort of preservation of folk culture. He gives credit to the rural women of Rajasthan, whose economic and linguistic knowledge were his source for folktales. And this reminds me of Ben Amos' remark when he says, once created, their indigenous environment and cultural context are not required for folk narratives for their continuous existence. Background information may be essential for the analytical interpretation of the materials, but none of it is crucial for sheer existence of the folklore forms. Tales and songs can shift media, cross language boundaries, pass from one language to another. So I personally work in crossing language boundaries, that is translating folk narratives from Rajasthani to English, which leads me to the question of the scale of retention of original meaning when their context is displaced, when the speaker is replaced with a male author, when the animals from desert ecology have limited significance for the readers, referring to the inherent duality that intextualization of folktales suffer from. So let's look at some excerpts of Lok-Geet. If you see, there are two, one in green and one in red. The first one says, Mara Susroji Sono Solmo, Mara Sasuji Earth Bhandar, Mara Jait Sa Baju Band Serka, Bhabi Sa Ho Baju Bandiri Lump. Sung by women, among women, don't usually, it wasn't performed in public as such, but in all female groups. The other one as well, Ora ne ma ghapsa ghapsa khan, mane e ma chamti loki, ora ne e ma pali pali ghee, mane e ma mario telko. So I choose these two excerpts from two different Lok-Geet because I want to highlight the contradiction, and I want the attendees to see how women in one case are talking about how unfair the division is between food and how their mother-in-law is just giving them oil to eat or dried rotis, while the other one appreciates their in-laws, appreciates the family members and her in-laws. There is a rough translation given. So a fine sketch of folk society and culture of Rajasthan that can be drawn on the basis of studying these songs. They here, if you see, I can also suggest that we look at these songs based on what occasion they are sung on. So there is Jalwa, wedding songs, which would be the one on the left side. So women usually sing these songs of praises during weddings, and Mand, which consists of songs of separation and marital bliss, which would be on the right side. They articulate the duality of women's lives, constrained by societal expectations, yet finding moments of solidarity and joy by embedding dissent in humor, spirituality, and collective ritual. Women transform folklore into a space where they felt unsure, their outlook towards the world, shaped by patriarchy but not defined by it, can thrive. These songs ensure that their struggles, joys, and dreams survive across generations, challenging hegemonic narratives while nurturing a distinctly female cultural legacy. Coming to the next Lok-Geet. And I chose this because tomorrow is Gangor, and this is part of, it is a festival in Rajasthan, and we sing songs only single women and women who are married, only women groups sing these songs early in the morning. And there is a phrase which caught my attention the first time I joined English studies, which was Hando Dhovan Fufo Manga Jhadu Devan Buva. And roughly it means we pray for so Buva is father's sister. We pray for a Buva who can clean the house, and we pray for uh, her husband who can wash our utensils. And they are praying for these things, among other things like luxury, gold, a good husband, and they're also praying for such things. This is sung in all female groups early morning. Interesting to note is the use of humor that echo female concerns. So how domestic chores become major part of their lifestyle. Women use humor and satire to mock figures of authority without direct confrontation here. Use and in traditional family structures, especially in patriarchal societies, elder relatives like the father, sister, and husband might hold authoritative positions. But by depicting them doing low status chores, the song subverts their authority. The humor comes from the contrast between their expected roles and the menial tasks they are shown performing. This undermines their status without directly attacking them, which aligns with the idea of using humor as a subtle tool of resistance. These songs are a medium through which women express dissent. In societies where direct opposition to male authority is discouraged or dangerous, in Rajasthan, as in many parts of India, family hierarchies are strict and elders command respect. Mocking them openly would be sort of a taboo. So the folk songs provide a socially acceptable outlet for expressing frustration. It's performed in groups or during certain rituals. The rhyme or rhythm of the songs make it catchy. Hando, Dhovan, Jhadu, Devan are vivid images that stick in the mind, making the satire more effective. Which brings me to the question of how does the communal aspect of folk songs aid in resistance? Here we also begin pondering on the transcendence that we were also, I think, in the opening remarks on the first day of the conference, where the transcendence, transcending through translation, which brings me to the next part of the presentation, which is using translation to reread Lokgeet. Essentially, we can understand any activity of communication as encoding and decoding. And if it is encoding and decoding, it is essentially translation. Translation activity. Remembering Benjamin's remark that translation is the afterlife of the original. Data, through his anthological efforts, renders an afterlife to the orality of Marwar. This orality shifts to the textual, and now we even enjoy popular movies and TV series adapting stories from Batari Fulbari. There is an effort for preserving, reviving, and relooking. Coming to the last case study or example that I wanted to give is Nagan Tharu Vanchpede, that is Nagan, may your line prosper. This translation of folk tale from Marwari to English done by Vishesh Kothari, published by HarperCollins. Roughly, it's a story of a woman who pretends that she has a son even though she doesn't. And on the day of the wedding of her son, Nagan, which is a female cobra, looks at the procession and feels bad for the lady and requests her husband, the Nag, the male cobra, to transform into a man and marry the girl so that she is not left on the altar. By doing so, the Nagan gives up her role as a female, gives her up her role as the wife. And so the interpretation of this snake symbol is diverse. I translated this tale into English, and I was faced with this challenge of how the snake symbol is encoded within the language, and when the language shifts, the meaning of the snake symbol could be shifting too. So even through entextualization, when the context changes, with each context, these symbolic meanings also add to it or take away from it. It could be region specific, it could be gender specific, or it could be age specific. I leave with a lot of questions rather than answers, but yeah, these are my opening remarks, sir.
Sorry, ma'am, time is.
Thank you. It's wonderful. It has opened up questions. Go to the next
Thank
one.
you, ma'am. The Sushmita Pareek describes all the folk narratives, folklore on Rajasthan like Lokgeet, Lokgatha, and many more. So now we are going to the next panelist, Dr. Vahini Billu, Assistant Professor, Department of English, SR University, Warangal. And now we are going to the next. Please present.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, esteemed Chair Dr. Manas Kumar Ganguly, for this opportunity. And I would also like to thank CFSR for organizing this wonderful seminar, and also CFCS And my heartfelt thanks to Jolly Puddiseri sir for this opportunity. And my paper title is for this panel is Vernacular Currents Textualizing Fisherwoman Stories from East Godavari. So basically, this paper specifically describes how oral folktales are transcribed into textuality with special focus on the fisherwoman from East Godavari district. So the community I have worked on is Palli Fisherwoman community from East Godavari. So I have collected as a part of fieldwork, I have collected some 67 folktales and some songs and anecdotes and proverbs. So some of the like I have divided some folktales according to the themes and all, and I'm contextualizing them thematically according to the panel. So this paper specifically describes how folktales are transcribed into textuality with special focus on the fisherwoman in East Godavari, Andhra Pradesh. So this vernacular narrative serves as repository of cultural memory and as well as something of critical knowledge, and also it contains information crucial to understanding socio-economic and environmental fabrics of coastal communities. So from longer time, oral traditions, which are recognized as a fundamental aspect of cultural heritage, have been playing a crucial role in the transmission of history, knowledge and values. For East Godavari fisherwomen, oral narratives are not just stories. They serve as something like a repository of knowledge, and they serve as a repository of ecological knowledge and reflections of socio-political resistance. These narratives are based on the daily challenges and successes of their life, and they create a glimpse into the intricate relationship of gender, environment, and tradition. Walter Wong, in his Virality, says that virality is that something uncovers the participatory nature of oral traditions. Written text in contracts are something as statics and often removed from context of performance. The nature of oral narratives is fluid, adjusting to the needs and the context of their audience. This evolution is reflected in fisherwoman stories, where traditional themes of resilience and cosmopolitanism are intertwined with contemporary disasters, including environmental degradation and gender inequalities. Moreover, the transition from variety to textuality offers opportunities as well as tensions. Through textualization, these tales become more accessible to larger audience, ensuring marginalized voices are heard and that cultural memory endures and serves in an increasingly globalized society. But telling stories ends up removing them from their social context and performity. For East Godavari fisherwomen, the issue is whether tales would be vernacular enough while addressing global discourse of sustainability and equity. In this process, the idea of vernacularity is key. Vernacularity preserves the unique symbols, idioms, and traces of a community with an eye to ensuring its cultural and linguistic specificity. For East Godavari fisherwomen, vernacularity manifests in the specific ecological knowledge the women articulate, harvesting cycles, breeding cycles, and sustainable fishing that endure and flourish. These stories are not just cultural artifacts, they are pragmatic guides that have sustained their people for generations. For example, the tale of Kamala and the Singing Waters shows how oral stories can entwine traditional ecological knowledge with ingenious solutions to modern problems. So, a Kamala story is a part of myth, a part of lived experiences, serves as a parable of resilience and adaptation. These kinds of stories demonstrate how oral traditions can respond to the need of society while remaining sorry while remaining to the needs of society while remaining rooted in the cultural context and practice. So such stories serve as powerful counter narratives to hegemonic patriarchal orders. So by bringing fishermen's agency and contribution to the forefront, they subvert socially constructed hierarchies that systematically marginalize their labor and knowledge in the world systems. So such narratives up alongside broader conversations in academia regarding orality and textuality, it problematizes the need to preserve the communal and performative aspect of oral traditions in the written and digital translations. Situating the fisherwomen's accounts in global context, this paper seeks to highlight the relevance for contemporary issues like climate change, gender equity, and cultural preservation. It illustrates connective eco-political strands of fisherwomen's oral narrative as interstitial, liminal modes of knowledge which emerge against and alongside the material conditions for diminished access to marine entitlements. This textualization not only serves as a method of preserving the utterances of these marginalized voices, but is also a transformative process that links together the local meaning along with global context to ensure that these voices will be heard across temporal, spatial, discursive barriers. So for the sake of convenience, I have divided themes into 5 broad aspects. So we will be looking at the aspects of vernacular heritage and folklore, and also virality and textuality, and gender and folklore, and indigenous knowledge and ecological narratives, and textualization and digital adaptations. So basically, if you are looking at the something called gender, labor, and agency, narratives from fishermen illustrate that they are not only laborers, knowledge bearers, and community leaders, but also facilitators of community resilience. The stories challenge patriarchal frameworks that sometimes render their contributions invisible, and the agency of women in cultivating resilience and innovation in the face of marginalization and adversity. This includes theories of gender stratification, including Judith Lorber's ideas, which describes gender roles as social constructs that perpetuate inequality. The fisherwoman's narrative disrupt these roles by placing women at the center as custodians of ecological knowledge and agents of social transformation. Furthermore, narratives like The Whispering Net showcase a collective females' resistance to understand sustainable practices. By weaving a symbolic net enchanted with songs, the fisherwomen unite their community to abandon destructive methods and return to traditional and sustainable fishing. These tales emphasize the transformative power of women's collective action.
Sorry, ma'am, please concluding
Yes, sir.
and focus
Yes, sir.
on concluding area. Due to shortage of time, so I reminded that. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you for reminding. And socio-economic challenges. So further, we have tales determining the aspect of ecological knowledge and sustainability, and cultural identity and intergenerational knowledge, and community solidarity and resistance. And also we have tales on the textualization and advocacy. In conclusion, I would like to say oral narratives help East Godavari fisherwomen keep them alive as tools for cultural identity, ecological knowledge, and gender equity. These are narratives that speak to the lived realities, bondages, and victories of a historically parried community and the marginalized voice that has been absent from academic and socio-political discourse for a long time. As they counter the wider narratives of sustainability and equity, these works reference global discourse animated by fried voices through the textualization of oral traditions and the inscription of vernacular heritage. But it also raises important questions for notions of ethnicity and representation, underscoring the need for careful and inclusive forms of documentation. One way to textualize is to make sure that these stories retain their performative, communal, and vernaculars that makes them rich and relatable through generations. Thank you. Thank you for this option.
Thank you, Vahini. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, and thank you all the audience to listen carefully about the discussions. And the next we'll go to the last panelist, Dr. Nivea Thomas K, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Cultural Studies, Chris Dimtu University, Bangalore. So please, ma'am, Nivea Thomas K, to present and to discuss our area.
Yes. Yes, thank you for Center for Folk Research and Folk Culture and Jolie Puducherry, sir, for giving me this opportunity. Due to shortage of time, I'll quickly start the presentation. I'm going to present my PPT. Is it visible?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. So here in today's presentation, I'm going to discuss a legend called Kadamatta Kattanad, which is in a state of transition. So as you all know, folklore is broadly categorized as oral narratives, material culture, folk customs, and performing arts. So in this study, I'll be specifically looking at oral narratives. And when you look at the narratives as genres. I will show you a few examples. Proverbs, legends, myths, folk tales, fairy tales. These are some of the folk narratives. And there are certain allegations against the folk narratives that have been going on for ages. One is they are very obsolete in nature, they are very outdated, and they are not at all contemporary in nature. That is one allegation. Then they are simple narratives. They do not use any complex language or structures, so they are always perceived as simple narratives, casual or informal. Again, they are not narrated in a very formal space. So usually in casual conversations, so they have that casual attribute. Then they are spontaneous in nature. They are not very consciously created art forms. So spontaneous and distortion. So sometimes folklore is also perceived as a lie. Sometimes whenever something is not true or if something is false, we say that it is just a myth. I think that statement also comes from this general notion that folklore distorts reality. So now we'll move on to the idea of folklore and literature. So before exploring the two aspects, it's important to touch upon the general characteristics of oral tradition. First one is richness of gestures. So as you all know, it is very performative in nature. We use our hands, facial gestures, modulations, or intonations of voice. So that way it has richness of gestures, which is very absent in the written tradition. It is very much situational in nature. It is very contextual, and there will be a lot of contextual elements in the narration of a folk genre. Then it is collective. It's the product of a collective the collective memories of a community. In that way, we cannot attribute a single author. It is a product of a collective or the collective memories of a community. And another aspect is anonymity. Example, if you take a folk song, you cannot think of who composed this folk song. So anonymity is also an important characteristic of oral tradition. It is very
the slides are not moving, and
oh.
Yeah, then you have to, I think you have to go into your point. No, I'm sorry, there is no time.
Okay.
Slides are not moving. Get into
Is
the
it
next
moving
slide.
now? One second.
No. Yeah, now, okay. It's moving, okay.
Then
Make
I'm
it a little more faster. Okay, sorry to
no
intervene.
problem. Okay. Then written tradition. So when they move to written tradition, I think we have to understand the characteristics of written tradition. It is an autonomous discourse. You cannot directly refute an author in a written text. Sometimes the author might be even dead. And these are stable in nature. So when the oral narratives move to written tradition, they become stable, fixed, and they are also attributed authorship. So paternity or authorship is also one important characteristic of written tradition. And it is from this authorship, the notion of originality also comes into play. And death is also regarded as one characteristic of written tradition. Again, it is not at all ever evolving and dynamic in nature. It lacks a lot of situational aspects. So it is regarded as a very fixed and stable form. So moving on to my primary text, Aidihimala. This was published in 1909, and it was published as part of the magazine Bhasha Poshini, and it was published in 8 volumes. So 126 legends from Kerala were collected and compiled and transcribed in this text called Aidihimala. And it was also part of a modernist mission because most of the writers and scholars were engaged in collecting folktales, proverbs, legends, and myths across India as part of reinventing a tradition. In order to counterbalance the effects of colonialism, there was an urge to reinvent a tradition. So this text was also part of that modernist mission. And if you look at the preface of this text, this is written in Malayalam, but I'll translate. So the editor of this magazine received an anonymous letter from a person saying that these legends are useless and casual in nature, and it should not be included in an elite magazine like Bhasha Poshini. So this letter to the editor itself shows the status of the folk narratives, the inferior status attributed to folk narratives. I'm not going into detail, but there is an interesting line stating that money should be charged from the compiler or the person who has compiled these legends, and it should be given to Sheshagiri Prabhu, who writes elite or canonical writings. And I'm just showing a sample from the text, what kinds of transformation is going on from the legend, from when it moves on to oral to written. One changes the form of writing. The form that the writer adopted is modern form called prose narrative. So earlier we were not familiar with prose narratives, but our writers and scholars were exposed to English magazines and journals and articles, and they adopted the form called prose narrative and specificity in time and space. So in oral narratives, you will not find very specific description of time and place, but when they moved on to a written tradition, you will find that there are specific mentions like 12 Nariga. Nariga is a unit of time. So it is very specific, and Trivandrum to Patmanabhapuram. So when you listen to oral narratives, the place names are not very specific. They will narrate it as a forest area or dense forest area or something of that sort. But here we have very specific place names. Then there are changes in characters. For example, the figure Pishaj, the evil spirit, is translated as Malayarian. Malayarian is a member of a tribal community. So how this Pishaj has been translated into Malayarian is also worth investigating, because it also questions the ethics of translation, because a tribal community is attributed all the evil characteristics of the figure called Pishaj. And again, it leads to stereotyping and misrepresentation of tribal communities, because the narrative uses terms like beastly, loathsome, disgusting, cavemen. So these all are examples for how the legend and some of the plot segments and characters are manipulated, because the caste prejudices of the times are also inbuilt in this kind of translation. And later you will find that Himala, this particular text, gained popularity, and 98,000 copies were sold between 1974 and 1995. And there was numerous publishers who took up this project. And later English translations also appeared in 2010 and 2015. And this, just like how Valmiki Ramayana is regarded as a standard text, here you will find that Himala is also regarded as a standard text, and we know that the word standard is problematic. So this is just a photo from the trailer of a movie called Kayam Kuram Kuchini. So in the trailer, they just they mention that this is taken from Himala. So their point is that it would sound more authentic, as you know, they have mentioned it, that this narrative is taken from Himala. So some of the aspects that we have to consider while translating oral narratives is, you should require an ethnographic imagination, a cultural imagination, and geographical imagination. And I will show you one picture. I myself have gone to the field and taken this picture. So this is one place which is mentioned in the legend, and this place.
Ma'am, sorry, ma'am, please short.
Okay. Yeah. So this was dense with palm trees and all. And I'll just show you two more websites, how certain concepts in the legend undergo translation when they are textualized. For example, the figure of Yakshi is translated as vampire in the temple website. And in the church website, you will find that sorcery. Sorcery is also a concept which is very much rooted in the local context of Kerala. And that is also turned into miracle, which is very much rooted in the Christian conceptual framework. And I will also show you just two photos before winding up. You can also find that as this legend moves on from one text to another, to movies and to theater, how you can see how the visual aesthetics are also undergoing transformation. This is a photo from 1965 play, and you can see palm trees in the background, and you can see the attire, you can see the appearance of this priest. And in the recent version, you will find that how our aesthetic sensibility also has undergone a transformation. Here you can see the robe, and all the motifs used here are definitely belonging to or resonate with the Western cinematic sensibility. And you can use Scopus theory to study what kind of agency is attributed to the translator, or the translator decides what role the primary text will play in his process of translation or in his decision-making process. I'm not going to this. I'll just quickly wind up. So no translation is final. Most of the translations are undergoing change. And I just wanted to show how Homeric versions even have undergone such variations over time, and different people have commented differently on the translations of Homer itself. With that, I'll wind up the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Nivea. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. First of all, thanks to all the panelists, and just in short summarize about all the discussion. First, Dr. Yanbeni Yanthan describes about the Naga village prescriptive model, older people, real history of themselves, and how do will indigenous to protect, to preserve heritage, and how to contextualize traditions. Very informative discussions. And then second, Dr. Sushmita Pareek, case study of the folk narratives, folklore of Rajasthan like Lokit, Lok Gatha, Lok Katha, etc. Examples of Rajasthani Lokit. Then Dr. Vahini Billu, assistant professor, describes about the repository of knowledge and success of the knowledge, vernacular indigenous knowledge, and informative discuss about the gender equality. Then Dr. Nivea discuss about the Kadamatru legend of the tradition, mostly very interesting area that the most of the ethical ways, because nowadays in the folk narratives or folk literatures misinterpret or misleading, so that it is very essential nowadays. So now going to the open or discussion forum or question answer forum, very short time, and hope will in these interactive sessions very helpful and informative to all the participants, and also as well as all the participants and others. So please, you have any questions to the panelists?
I'm so sad that we don't have much time, but it's a wonderful session. We started with Benny questioning how do we contextualize our own history from a Naga perspective, from an internal perspective. It is from there to, Nivea's revelation of how translation change entire identity or the soul of the the text into a different form. So what I'm trying to propose is, since all of you know each other, you can bring in concepts of ethnicity, translation, gender, genre, textualization, etc., 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 etc. Keep changing, and how it can add on with some of your own fellow travelers. It can become a wonderful, wonderful compilation of work. So where you can really ask certain questions like Sushmita is telling, how the shift in the teller's gender makes the story into something else, and how can we pierce into that, and or Vahini is trying to bring in how genres get changed and when it gets textualized, or many kinds of questions like the pertinent questions like Ben asking about the cultural amnesia and the diminishing of the heritage, or the globalized touristification of the heritage. And things underwent amazing amount of changes when culture gets manifested in the form of oral, textual, visual, digital, etc., etc. So I think it's a wonderful session, but we don't have time. I'm so sorry, and so nice to see all of you. That is why. So okay. Anyway, we can, for the time's sake, we can take up one question. Sorry, I am stealing your time. Yeah.
Anyone have any questions? So raise hand by Rohit.
First of all, thanks to all for a wonderful presentation on folktale and folk narratives. My question is about when the folktale or narrative became unfolk. What is the boundary where this folk became unfolk? So that's a question, because all of you talked about the transition phase. In that sense, if oral narrative is folk in some region, and until it got written, until it got stable, or you know uh, written, or one would say uh, permanent, in that sense, Vedas for a long time not got written. So in this definition, the Vedas were initially the folk until it got written and transcend to the all over the India. So I'm just like thought about it, and I asked it. I don't know how much I write, and my question is justifiable. So that's my question. Thank you.
Can I start?
Yeah, on behalf of everybody, Nivea, please.
Yeah, it is just my opinion. Rather than looking at it as death of folk or becoming unfolk, we know that a lot of characteristics of folk are lost in the process. But I think we can also look at it from a different perspective, saying that folk is also exploring new avenues rather than fading away or dying out. It is also exploring. Now we have folklore or folk memes or themes on digital platforms as well. So this is also one way to look at it, exploring new avenues.
I want to add to it. I want to I looked into in my research how folk narratives were slowly turning into children's literature. So when you talk about when folk turns into non-folk, I don't understand that term, but I do agree that from folk narratives we do in transition or in translation the genre changes. So it could become legend, or it could become part of children's literature. So the genre might change based on the kind of textual writing it is rendered into. Or performed as. It might change as a play or in theater or something. But yeah, the genres keep on evolving. But as I think I quoted Amos saying, the essence remains. If it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. That is one of the characteristics, though. We need to have versions and variations to go on. That's why we still live with the stories. But still, Ben's question is, looming at me. How do we contextualize? Why do we contextualize? In what way we represent? What way we represent? Do we agree with the representation, like Sushmita peers into Vijayendra Datta's entire transformation, or Nivea looks at the figuration and transformation into commodity fetish, and Vahini opens up possibility. That is the thing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm not taking and stealing time from Manas. Manas, sorry that I was unnecessarily like.
No,
I
sir,
see
no,
my
sir.
students, I get excited, and I am so happy. They all.
It is a great session and informative session, I think.
Funnily, I feel like Ben and Nivea is sitting in the same room. So, so that's the globalization makes us to do. Okay, thank you so much. I think Manasvi, I think Rusha, we have to go into the next session, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Thank you all. Thank you. Somebody will thank you. Yeah.
Once again, also sorry for the interruption regarding the time allotment. I think everyone should take time, and if possible, next time we'll more time to discuss everything.
No, I underestimated my students. I'm humble. I'm humbled. I underestimate.
Okay, sir. Okay, the esteemed panelists and Dr. Ganguly, thank you very much for such a wonderful panel session, such an engrossing panel session. We all were enchanted after listening you, and the new areas of folklore studies has opened before our eyes now. So thank you very much. Thank you all. And the next session will be starting from 1 sharp. That will be the paper presentation sessions. Back to back, there will be paper presentation sessions. So please stay tuned and join us at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.